What's happening, guys? So, coming up this weekend, we've got the Errol Spence Jr. Mikey Garcia IBF welterweight title fight coming up, and a while back I did a prediction video for this fight. It's already up on my channel. I pretty much broke the fight down and how I see it. However, I wanted to do a sort of a final thoughts video on it. I really wanted to just revise a few things because on the build up to this fight, I wouldn't really say that I've changed my mind, but what I will say is that I have been watching a lot more of these guys, and I do have a little bit more to add. Now, I said in my prediction video for the fight that it was a fight that I was struggling to pick a winner because it was one of them fights. Initially, my initial thoughts on it were that it was one of them fights that I could totally see two different outcomes. Like I mentioned in the video how I could see a scenario where Spence turned out to be too big, too strong, too durable, and too powerful for Mikey Garcia in his first fight at welterweight. And I could totally see a scenario where Spence is able to overwhelm and break Mikey Garcia down and stop him in the late rounds. And I also pointed out in the video that I felt that Garcia, because I remembered watching Errol Spence in some of his fights, and I remembered some particular flaws that I picked up on from Errol Spence and things that I saw from his fight against Kell Brook and his fight against Leonard Bundu and some of his other fights that I felt a fighter like Mikey Garcia could exploit. So I did point out that I do think it's possible that Garcia can win the fight. I felt it's possible that Garcia could outbox Spence, and I could see Mikey Garcia winning on points. However, as the fight's gotten closer, and as I've been watching some of their other fights, I'd say my opinion on the fight has been shaken a little bit. And as the fight gets closer, I'm more geared towards picking Errol Spence for the win. And let's talk about why. Now, a few weeks ago, I was watching Box Nation. I was at a friend's house and we were watching Box Nation, and they were showing a repeat of the Mikey Garcia Sergey Lipinets fight. Now, you guys know that I reviewed Mikey Garcia Sergey Lipinets. I watched it, and you guys know my thoughts on that fight. I thought Sergey Lipinets clearly won the fight. I thought it was a robbery. Everybody seems to well, not everybody, but a lot of people seem to disagree with me on that, and a lot of people seem to think that the fight was close. I was watching it with my friend, and my friend, he's a bit of a Mikey Garcia fan. He really likes Mikey Garcia and really rates him highly. And he was saying to me that he thought Garcia won the fight, and again, most people thought Garcia won the fight. And as I was watching the fight and as I was putting things out, I found myself really, really picking holes in Mikey Garcia, and I was really basically saying all the stuff that I said in my post-fight review, where I was saying, look, what exactly is Garcia doing in this fight? He's getting out-jabbed. Okay, he's getting his nose busted with the jab from the early rounds. He's missing punches. He can't seem to land the right hand. He's being caught to the body. He's being backed up by Sergey Lipinets. Sergey Lipinets was the aggressor in the fight. Sergey Lipinets threw more punches. He landed more punches. He was effortlessly catching Mikey Garcia to the body. And Lawrence Cole was warning him for no reason whatsoever. And this is the same fucking Lawrence Cole who let Salido low blow the shit out of Vasyl Lomachenko. And this is that referee. He's very selective about who he warns for fouls. I mean, he allowed Andre Durrell to foul Arthur Abraham all night and stuff like that. He's just a very biased referee, and I felt that kind of threw Sergey Lipinets off his game a little bit. And as I was doing that, I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, if Sergey Lipinets is outboxing and schooling Mikey Garcia the way he was, it really doesn't bode well for him going in against Errol Spence Jr. And yesterday I watched a film study, and I'll leave a link in the description section to this. Precise Presenter made a film study on the fight, and he on his new channel, Fight Film. Again, I'll leave a link in the description to the film study if you guys want to check it out. And yeah, Precise was talking about how he believes that Errol Spence is not only going to win the fight, but he believes that Errol Spence is going to trash Mikey Garcia he believes Errol Spence is going to destroy him, and that it's going to be a very one-sided and very quick, easy night for Errol Spence. And I can totally see. I was watching his film study. He was pointing out a lot of the things that I pointed out about Mikey Garcia and Lipinets, about how Mikey Garcia seemed to have no clue what to do with Lipinets. The fact that Lipinets using his jab and using his body punching and his movement and just backing him up using feints, Mikey Garcia just seemed too basic, and Mikey Garcia just seemed a little bit one-dimensional to me. And although Mikey Garcia, as I've said in the past, is very fundamentally good, throws some nice straight punches, he's a big puncher, got a really good counter left hook, a really good right hand. There's not really anything that Mikey Garcia does that's that special. Now, you might think, well, why am I saying this now? Because why in my prediction video was I saying that Mikey had a really good chance? Well, the reason why I was saying that is because Errol Spence Jr., from what I've seen of watching him, is a guy who's very hittable, and I can genuinely see Mikey Garcia walking Errol Spence into punches, like kind of how you guys remember how he dropped Lipinets? He walked him into a left hook. He kind of caught him off balance. Well, Errol Spence to me gets caught a lot like that in his fights. If you look at the Kell Brook fight, how easily Brook was able to catch him with the right hand, and even the Bundu fight, he was able to catch Spence with the right hand. And I just felt that Spence to me is a little bit overly aggressive at times and a little bit, careless at times with his defense, and he kind of walks onto shots a lot. And I was thinking to myself in that prediction video, that Garcia, Garcia must have taken the fight for a reason. He must see something in Errol Spence that the rest of us don't see. And I just felt that Garcia could maybe outbox him and maybe win on points. But as the fight's gotten closer, as I said, I favour Errol Spence more and more. Today I was looking at some pictures of the two next to each other, and I didn't realise just how much bigger Errol Spence was, because obviously I knew Errol Spence was a big welterweight, and I knew that Mikey was moving up. But I felt that Mikey was probably naturally bigger than lightweight anyway. But looking at the two next to each other, it's clear that Errol is a couple of weight divisions higher, by nature. He's naturally the bigger guy, and obviously Mikey has fought bigger guys in the past, like Robert Easter Jr., but as Precise pointed out in his film study, and I really should have pointed this out too, Robert Easter was terrible, man. I mean, the guy clearly lost, in my opinion, to the Russian guy, Denis Shafikov. A lot of people thought he lost to Richard Comey. I thought he clearly lost to Javier Fortuna. So and I watched that fight a couple of times, the Javier Fortuna one, and I thought Javier Fortuna clearly beat Robert Easter both times, clearly won in my opinion. So Robert Easter was very one-dimensional. He was very stiff and upright and didn't really have much boxing skill, didn't really have much, fluidity to him. So the fact that Garcia was able to drop and outbox Robert Easter, to me, it wasn't overly impressive. And I just think as the fight's gotten closer, if I'm being honest, as it's gotten closer, it's a few days away now. I think that it's coming up this weekend, and I just think that Mikey might be in over his head in this one. I think he might be out of his depth. I still think he can outbox Errol Spence, because I do think he's a better boxer of the two, but I just I don't really know if he can really handle the reach. The Errol Spence is going to have a big reach advantage, and Errol Spence is a southpaw, so that's going to give him an advantage on the outside. Spence does throw the jab. Again, Precise was talking about this in his breakdown of the fight, his film study, that Errol Spence does everything off the jab. And one thing that he pointed out that I didn't really take into consideration before when I was first talking about this fight is that Kell Brook is a considerably harder puncher than Mikey Garcia. Kell Brook's a huge puncher at welterweight, and Kell Brook also is quite quick at welterweight, and he wasn't able to keep Errol Spence at bay long enough to win the fight. And obviously Kell Brook wasn't at his prime. Kell Brook had a broken eye socket. Kell Brook was coming off the stoppage defeat to Golovkin, so it wasn't him at his prime. But you have to take into consideration that if Errol Spence can take clean punches from somebody like Kell Brook, and if he can do it overseas in Kell Brook's backyard in Sheffield, in the UK. This fight's going to be in Texas. This fight's going to be in Errol Spence's backyard. Now, obviously, there will be a lot of Mexicans in the crowd supporting Garcia. That Errol Spence is going to have his own contingent of fans, people from Texas that support him, and a lot of it is going to depend on the referee. If they have Lawrence Cole, that's going to be interesting because Lawrence Cole protected Mikey Garcia against Lipinets and has a history of protecting Mexican fighters. But he also has a history of protecting Black Americans too. I mean, he protected Andre Durrell against Arthur Abraham. Talked about that. You know, he's protected Marquez in the past as well, again, Mexicans. So Lawrence Cole, if he's the referee for the fight, that's going to make it interesting to see who he protects. But I think that Errol Spence probably has the more, the more promotional support. You know, he's the guy that they're trying to push. He's the guy that Al Heyman and all these other guys involved are really trying to push as the next big thing. They're calling him the truth and saying that he's a next pound for pound king and that, and he beat Mayweather in sparring and all this stuff. It seems to me like Errol Spence, he's the one who's set up for the win. And being the bigger guy, being the guy who's at welterweight defending the title, he's the champion. So if it's close, you expect the champion to get the close rounds. Being that he's going to be much physically stronger, he's shown a better chin in his career so far, like against Kell Brook and whatnot. So I think that Errol Spence, although I can see Garcia outboxing him, I can totally see it. As I said before, the closer the fight gets, I favour Spence for the win by stoppage. So my final prediction for this fight is I think early on it's going to be difficult for Spence. I think he's going to walk into some shots. I think that Garcia might win some rounds. But I think as time goes on and as the fight goes on, I can see Mikey getting broken down and maybe getting stopped in the later rounds. So I'm going to go for a late stoppage for Errol Spence Jr. Let me know what you guys think about this one, and thanks for watching. God bless.